What's up, y'all? I'm back for another video. Originally, I was gonna review Land of Bad, but I didn't end up watching it today. But I still wanted to do a video, so I figured, why not do a part two of a video I did a couple of weeks ago where I talked about you know, what they should stop doing slave movies, and I just figure extrapolate and talk about hold on, just grab me something. I figure. Because this has been a problem, I just feel like the last few years. I think I made a similar video a couple years ago, but it has definitely gotten fucking worse over the last, just specifically with black characters. We gotta push this narrative that we're victims all the time, so we gotta deal with characters. You have to, even taking established characters like Falcon or Nick Fury, and you make them whinge about race when it makes no sense to do. Nick Fury is the leader of a whole fucking organization. And you know what? Instead of doing a good black, Nick Fury show, you fuck it up. You make him a bitch. I mean, obviously, because this goes to the whole. I think what they did to Nick Fury is a bigger problem. What they do to male characters in general. I know people talk about this specifically with black men, but I think this is a problem with male characters in general. That this pussifying and we gotta prop the women up, and so we gotta always bring the male characters down. So I think it's a mix of that, but I also do think it's this agenda thing with black characters. You can't just have Nick Fury just be a success, because if he is, you can't push that I'm a victim of shit. I mean, you look at characters you had roots. That's why I was talking about it in the last video. You had roots, but you also had Eddie Murphy be just the amount of fun characters Eddie Murphy has played, or fucking, Murtaugh from the Lethal Weapon movies, fucking any Wesley Snipes, but specifically Blade, what that did for comic book, but just his story is so interesting about being a half man, half vampire. And instead of exploring that, maybe even go further. Because as much as I love the first Blade movie, they don't go too deep into his backstory. Which I'm not saying you need to go all out, but I would not mind if they're fuck it, we're gonna go a little bit more into his story if you wanted to explore that. But no, we're gonna do this one set in the 30s. I know that's what that's apparently the story is gonna be. Or the new Blade is that. And it's gonna be set in the 30s. They do with his daughter, but dude, we could already talk about that. Randomly adding his daughter because his daughter can get all the story and he's just there in his own movie. But that's part of the problem. But the other problem is they're only setting in the 30s so they can do a racism subplot, because that's what matters in a Blade story. That's what I mean. You can't just have a story with a black character that is somehow not tied to that, because it's just lazy. It's with women, there also has to be some kind of struggle with them being a woman, or how society's woman can't do that. There's always that with some female characters too, in some way, shape, or form. And it's God forbid you have a character have a conflict that has nothing to do with that. Even in movies hood movies, Boys in the Hood, for example, Trey's problem, his whole arc has nothing to do with skin color. It's just he's trying to get out of the hood, and they explore that. Yeah, there's a point where there is a racist cop, right? But arguably his whole arc isn't about racism, and he's actually trying to explore. Even in a movie like that, Django, even in that movie, ultimately it was still about saving his wife. That can be a universal thing that makes us fan of characters. Jon Stewart, military man, family man. And that's why it frustrates me when I see race swapping in DC specifically, but even in Marvel, just the amount of black characters that aren't explored because they don't think they'd rather swap them. But that's part of it. But I also think the problem is that, or they'll adapt them as a victim. I fear if they actually do we finally get a John Stewart, they'll make him some kind of victim. Even with like Static Shock in some of the newer comics, apparently they tweaked his story and made it like so they could tie it to BLM. So they had it like that he died at a protest, even though or not, he got his powers from the protest. I mean, he died at a protest, but like, so they can tie it to like, police brutality, and it's like, that's not his character. But you changed, it's like, because you can't just have successful black characters or black characters that have arcs or interesting stories that have nothing to do with their skin color, because these people are unoriginal, and that's what they think black people want to see all the time. And you actually look at a lot of Twitter, even a lot of people who are on the on the that revolutionary shit, I think they sometimes just want fun characters that are just successful. Let's get back to that. I mean, any of the other characters Samuel L. Jackson played were all just successful characters we all love. Not because he's black, just because he was a great fucking actor. Denzel. Equalizer is like the perfect example of like a modern, Creed. I think are probably the two examples where it's done right. Creed is just a successful boxer. Equalizer, he just wants to just get fucking revenge. Basically, he just wants to right wrongs. That's pretty much the gimmick of those movies. That's pretty much it. He just wants to right the wrong. He sees something wrong be done, he wants to right it. That's simple. Nothing to do with the skin color. And that's why it makes those movies work. And that's why Denzel, to me, is long lasting, because he understands there's more to black people than that stuff. And it just, unfortunately, Hollywood just stuck to just writing this style that, I don't know, I think they just think it's easier. It's the easier route to go, I mean, Static Shock, like the comic cartoon, he was this high school kid. Like, like, you can remember being in high school and just trying to, he's almost like a little bit like Spider-Man in that sense. He's a normal high school kid who's also got to navigate being a superhero, or like a local superhero. There's a little bit of that you can identify with. And it's just like DC doesn't want to do it, or they're just going to lean with the victimhood stuff because we got to now. Because it's easier. And it's frustrating because I just want fun characters in general, and we can't have that anymore. At least apparently black characters, unless I know who the creator is, because I've gotten to a point where and I hate to sound, it sounds shitty, but I don't fucking care. I almost dread seeing black characters now, especially if I know the directors of both piece of shit, because I know they're not going to be fun. They're just going to be another woe is me character, and that's unfortunately what my characters have turned into. But because unfortunately with other groups, you don't see this kind of writing. Shogun, you just see proud, like a show like Shogun, you just see proud Japanese people about their culture. Why can't we have that? We're just successful characters in general that is not about their skin color, or if they're about their culture but they're still like proud of it, but they're also badasses. You're gonna do something like that, but no, we can't. It always has to be this oppression shit, and it's just tired. And I'm tired of saying it because I want better. Because I think we can get back to a point where we can just get fun characters again. I would love to see Jon Stewart done right. Spawn, one of my favorite characters. He's such a complex, like, Al Simmons. He was just he's a mercenary. He did some bad things, but unfortunately, he got fucked over. It depends. The show, I think in some versions, he gets turned on by his people. I know the movie kind of tweaked it compared to the comic version, but he basically got fucked over and turned on and pretty much killed. But then he made a deal. It's kind of similar to Ghost Rider in that kind of sense. And he gets chosen to become a Hellspawn, and pretty much ever since then he becomes Spawn. But what comes with it is basically you're not you're you he can no longer see his love of his life. I think in the show it's Wanda is the name. She ends up getting married to his best friend, and he can't do anything about it because he's a hellspawn. He's forever trapped being a hellspawn. He can never see his wife again. He can never see the love of his life again. Touch her. She can't even look at him because he's not the same Al anymore. So that's such interesting storytelling. But you know, in a modern edition, they would just make it about a skin color. When you boil down these complex characters that have such interesting stories, and you throw all that out just so you can make it about race, that's what I mean, and that's it's frustrating. You just adapted Spawn straight. You could tell such good stories. That's one of the reasons I love the animated series. He's basically you feel bad for him because it's like he's a not just damaged, but he's a cursed character in that sense. He can never touch his wife again. You want him to, but you know he can't. You know, Al Simmons is gone. And he has to forever basically be stuck in that body knowing he can never have a normal life again. And he has to watch as his best friend is living the life he almost had. It's a tortured, I love that kind of story, you know? And if you could do that right, and they don't want to, but no, they don't want to, they wouldn't lean into that shit in the movie. So anyway, I don't want to just ramble on, but I wanted to talk about this because it is frustrating to see. Because in general, I love great characters and great writing. But they don't want to, Hollywood's just lazy and they don't want to do that these days. I guess they see a black person, oh, we just got to make it about them being black and their, racism. It's simple. That's the only thing we can do. Or with women, there's always some sexism, or a gay character is homophobia. And it gets to what it's mean, but white characters are the only characters you can actually do shit with because there's no, preconceived oppression or any kind of thing you could push on white characters because they're just white or straight so it gets to a point when only the quote unquote main, majority are the only ones that can actually get decent representation. And I mean not the representation these weirdos are saying. I'm talking about real representation in the sense of we can't get different complex characters. Actually, you know what? I even have an extra one. We're in the opposite side where you can't have complex characters because Hollywood is scared to we can't have a black villain because, racism and black people are always depicted as villains, so that you can't have black villains anymore. Or if they are, it's always sympathetic. They do the same thing with women. I call it racism of low expectations because when you can't acknowledge that people are all people can be evil equally. I would love a well-written black villain because I love villains. I love villains in general of all races. Candyman is probably the closest we kind of had in recent years because they're so scared. Because the only time you can have a black villain is if the white man made him do it. It's like the reverse with women. Like men made her do it. That's the only thing you can do now. Society made them do it. Something. It's always some other factor. You can't just have a person just straight up evil. And I just love that. So it's that too. So that's what I mean. It's going back to white people are the only people you can have. You can have a white person who's just evil or a fun white character because there's no preconceived impression. So you can just do whatever. You basically have to write them like a normal character. That's the fucked up part. It's the fucking weird part. Where I think you can do that with all races. Just write them as good characters and people will fucking follow. Green Lantern, Jon Stewart. A lot of people, that's their Green Lantern. He's the one that most people grew up on. Static Shock. Axel Foley, who's a movie character, but Mace Windu, Spawn. All great characters. Jax from Mortal Kombat. All great characters that everyone loves. And I just want to get back to a point where Hollywood can, and not just Hollywood, just in general media, can just have fun with black characters again. Not saying you can't have those stories occasionally, but it's just getting tiresome when that's all we fucking get now. Or even a show like Fresh Prince. Yeah, there were episodes that dealt with racism, but they also was a fun show and was overall just talked about different issues. And that's why it was successful. So I'm just like mentioning all this different stuff within even just, but we don't get shit like that now. It's always the same shit. So anyway, I don't want to meander on anymore, but I just figured. Tomorrow I'm gonna be reviewing Rhinestone. I was gonna originally try to watch it tonight. I didn't. So it'll probably be sometime tomorrow night. I'll review it. Um, and then I'll see if I can find a Screen Rant article for Sunday, or I'll review something else Sunday. I don't know. We'll figure it out. All right, y'all. I'll talk to y'all in a bit. Talk to y'all tomorrow.